Super simple today. 5 mistakes to avoid when visiting galleries. People will say to me really often that they went to a gallery, they had a bad experience, they weren't really sure what they were supposed to do, what they were supposed to look at. It was too busy, they were overwhelmed, they were starving, they don't really remember what they saw, and they kind of feel let down by the experience. And I think there are 5 things which are really simple, which, if you can avoid, will make your experience so much better. I want you to go to a gallery and have a good time. That's all this video is designed to do. Right, one thing that I'm going to give you permission to do is not get hung up on the wall labels. Yes, the wall label can be very useful, tells you the name, the artist tells you when it was painted, a few sentences about it. But there's a problem sometimes when we look at the wall label and we think that it's going to kind of unlock the mystery of the artwork that we're looking at. Somehow it's like the Da Vinci Code, and if we just get to look at the label, the gallery's really busy, and if we can just get to the label, then we'll unlock the painting. And that's not really what the label is there for at all. It's an aid to looking, but it's not the looking. We can get really focused on that label and expect it to deliver. But actually, what we need to do is just go back to the artwork. So if it's a painting, spend time with that painting instead. If you're really new to this, maybe just find 5 things to notice in the picture. Maybe there's a sunset or a hay wain or some water lilies or some sunflowers. And of course, I'm talking about classic artworks here, but you know what I mean. What's the motive? What can you see in the picture? How does it make you feel? How has it been painted? Is there loads of paint flung around? Is it quite restrained? Just start to try and observe and notice things about the picture. Just tune into it. They're just your observations, and they're the way the picture makes you feel. And it might not make you feel anything, and that's absolutely fine. But trust me, that wall label is not going to decode that picture for you. It's a bit of a misnomer. Spend your time with the picture instead. The next thing to think about is scale. Don't get scale wrong. It's so easy to fall into the trap of seeing, I don't know, a big Vincent van Gogh exhibition advertised in the newspaper. You're seeing it everywhere. It's very well signposted. And you kind of think, all right, it's time for me to come out of art hiding. I haven't been to a museum or a gallery in a couple of years, which is perfectly normal. And you decide that that's the exhibition you're going to go and see. But the problem with that is that it's going to be a blockbuster. It's going to be packed. You're going to be shoulder to shoulder with people. You're going to be jostling to see the art, and it doesn't make for the most exciting art viewing experience, unfortunately. Those exhibitions are really important, but if you're new to this, if you're not doing it very often, if you're really trying to improve your experience, that is not the place to go. And listen, the other thing that I want to tell you is that being outside of a big art city is a huge advantage sometimes, especially when you're doing this, when you're trying to create space for yourself to have a really great time. So, for example, in the UK, there are museums up and down the country. I love the Walker Art Gallery in Liverpool. I love the Whitworth in Manchester, the Ashmolean in Oxford, the Barber Institute, my gosh, in Birmingham. It's got like great impressionist works, great pre-Raphaelites, like banging classic artworks, but in an environment which is much more conducive to you occupying your space, having time to breathe and think, and having a really exciting art experience. And of course, I'm not saying I don't want you to go to all the massive major museums. You know, if you're going to Paris, you're going to go to the Louvre. If you're in London, you're going to want to see the National Gallery. In New York, the Metropolitan Museum. These places are absolutely epic, but I don't think they're the best place to start. And if you are going to them, then I just think it's worth so much to think about the timing that you're going to go, like book your tickets in advance if you can, but think about when the museum is busiest and how it suits your schedule. When I lived in Rome, I used to rock up to the Vatican museums at like 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon because it was always so much quieter. And of course, I had that privilege because I lived there. But you can try and sort of act like you own the joint, act like you live in the city, and don't put yourself under all that pressure to get there at like 9 a.m. on Monday morning because everybody else has had the same idea. And that leads me to my next point. It's far better to go to one of those places and have a lot less time, but think about quality, not quantity. So what do I mean by quality over quantity? I'm not telling you to kind of rate all the pictures that you intend to see and decide whether they're worth it. I'm talking about the quality of your experience. So when you go to one of those major museums, or in fact any museum, any gallery, think about a decent length of time to be there, but don't overdo it. It's totally understandable. Like if you're in New York, it's expensive to go to those museums. It is in Europe as well. you've just like lost 20 euros and you're thinking, right, I've got to get my money's worth. But if you go around the entire museum trying to see everything, you're just going to end up with art fatigue, and it is not going to do anything to enliven the experience for you. Give yourself permission to just say, we're going for an hour. We're going for an hour and a half tops. Like, you want to be able to make sure that you've got the stamina to actually be engaging with the artwork. So you've got to make a decision. You've got to make a decision whether you're only going to go and see certain artworks and you're going to work out where they are in advance, or you're going to choose one wing. So, for example, when I go to the Metropolitan, I'll decide, right, I'm just going to go and look at all their gorgeous Impressionist pictures. Desperate to see Degas' ballerina again, and there's lovely Caillebotte pictures. And I'm only going to do that. And even though I know there's amazing stuff downstairs, and I still haven't really been into the Egyptian section properly, I'm not going because I really need to focus on the thing that I wanted to see most. And I know it's really painful. It's difficult to know that there's this masterpiece downstairs that you didn't get around to seeing. But think about it like when you go to an all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet. If you're throwing up when you get home because you ate everything, it's not improving your experience. And unfortunately, that's just the way the cookie crumbles with art as well. The point is that those museums have more art than you could ever see in a lifetime. So really give yourself permission to say, I only need to go for a certain period of time, and I'm going to focus in this way. You're going to have a much, much better time, and your money will be so much better spent. Right, speaking of all you can eat Chinese buffets, I want to talk to you about food for a moment. When I first started working in the art world, it was about 20 years ago, I worked at the British Museum, and there was this kind of snobbery. There were these comments about the fact that when they redeveloped the Great Court of the British Museum, they put a lot of attention into the restaurant that they were going to put in. And there was this feeling like you don't go to the greatest art institutions in the world to have a nice lunch. And actually, I completely disagree. And I think most museums and the galleries in the world now know that they're going to serve the public, the viewing public, who need to eat. I mean, what crime is there in wanting to go and see some absolutely gorgeous pictures and going for a fabulous lunch afterwards? So I really implore you, organize your next meal, whether it's lunch or whether it's dinner. There's no shame in that. I would never go to a museum if I didn't know what I was going to eat afterwards. I'm really serious about this. And you know, the French got this right when they opened the Centre Pompidou. They put the most chic, fabulous restaurant on the rooftop, and people just go to the restaurant even without going to the museum. That's absolutely fine. The National Portrait Gallery in London, when it reopened last year, put in an absolutely sensational restaurant, The Portrait by Richard Corrigan. There's going to be an amazing new restaurant that goes into the National Gallery when they reopen the Sainsbury's Wing finally. I think this is happening the world over. And I think it's really important because it sends a signal that this is supposed to be a nice time for you. This is not supposed to be hard work. This is not homework. This is art. It's good for you, and food's good for you. Have a gorgeous meal planned. And listen, a lot of the restaurants I've just talked about are quite spenny and they're kind of special occasion places. When I go with my daughter, I just make sure that I've got a really good packed lunch, some lovely things in there to look forward to. Because you know what's really sad is when you've had a great hour and a half at the museum, no one cried, no one got lost. Some people even like the art and they've got something to talk about. And then you spend like 45 minutes wandering around trying to find somewhere for lunch. Everywhere's packed. No one can agree on what they want. And then you're all kind of just grouchy and hungry. You've been walking around the museum. Your body is ready for fuel. It's been intellectually and emotionally stimulated. Make that lunch planned out in advance and then spend the lunchtime talking about the art that you've just seen, what you loved and what you didn't like. And finally, yes, and this is quite fun, I want you to think about the art that you don't like. Because the best news of all is you don't have to like it all. One of the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to all art experiences is that they think they have to like it all, that there's no permission, there's no negotiation for saying, I just don't like that, or that does nothing for me. When did you last watch a movie and not have an opinion on it, or eat a meal and not have an opinion, or read a book or listen to some music? My sister's always trying to get me to listen to drum and bass. It hurts my ears. It's not music. I don't like it. That's my opinion, and she has hers. And that's what art is in all of its various forms. It's got to be about you and how you feel. And that's why I want you to spend time looking at the pictures, not worrying about the wall labels. I want you to put yourself front and center in this experience. You are supposed to be having an experience of your own, and it's unique to you. So at lunchtime, it's great. You can sit and say, no, I didn't really get that. I find Degas too fussy and too pretty. What really excited me was this other thing that we saw. It's lovely to have those kind of conversations. I think it's really instructive to remember what Alan Bennett said. So, Alan Bennett, a great British playwright, and he said, in front of every museum and gallery in the world, there should be a big old sign, and it should just say, you don't have to like it all. Give yourself permission to chart your own course. Find the smaller galleries, find the quieter times. Don't worry so much about the wall labels. Look at the artwork, look at the sculpture, look at the picture. What does it say to you? If it doesn't say anything, I give you permission to just move on. Have a great conversation about it with the people you go with. Know what you're going to have for lunch. Be like Kate, Bryan, always be thinking about where your next meal's coming from. It's a perfectly acceptable and exciting and vital way of seeing art, to put yourself first and think about your experience. And it's a huge motivation of mine to help everybody have a lovely time with art, because we all deserve it, because it's good for us. There's huge sections of my book, How to Art, which are how to talk about art you like, how to talk about art you don't like, how to take your kid to a gallery, how to make your dog more cultural. I'm really serious. Maybe I can make your dog more cultural. And so what I want to leave you with is this idea that you don't have to educate yourself and give yourself this big art history degree to have a relationship with art. You are absolutely brilliant just as you are. And I want to give you the hacks to have a good time. And I really hope this does that for you. Go and plan your next visit and tell me how you get on.